Hey guys, welcome to my Geek Rant. So today we are going to talk about Lost Stars, which I am completely behind on. It came out a month ago, but I guess we get the perspective of what I get after the big hype of it. So yes, I think it was both underhyped and overhyped. On one hand, it was underhyped because before the book came out, it was all about aftermath, and this book was kind of chalked up as a young adult novel, which made people think it was more like a romance, Twilight meets Star Wars or something like that, which I think the marketing team that did that didn't really do it much service because it's way beyond that. But from all the people who were saying like, oh, it's so good, I think they were really basing their interpretations off of Aftermath, which was, generally speaking, among fans, pretty disappointing. It's very mixed, actually. Some people really like it, some people really don't like it. I'm leaning more to the aspect of I didn't really like the total package of it, but of course, I have my review over here somewhere, so you can watch that here. But yes, for this, it's definitely good. It's definitely a good book. I just don't think it's as good. It's not like transcended. It's not like the best Star Wars novel ever, at least in my opinion. I definitely have other favorites, but some people are chalking it up to be like, the best Star Wars book to like come out and like forever. But again, that's not a knock on the book at all. I actually really, really enjoyed it. I think it has some very, very deep themes, actually possibly in terms of just relating a theme and really watching that theme culminate over time, especially in the ending. I feel like this book, of really a lot of Star Wars books, does that really well, and it's something that you get a lot of when you're like, in college, and you get like those classic books that have those strong themes that you can just discuss for days. I think this does a really good job of establishing what this is about and what the struggles are, and really, really wondering what those struggles mean and how they can manifest themselves throughout the story. So on that aspect, I think it does that brilliantly, and I think it does it better than a lot of other Star Wars books out there, and was probably my favorite part of it, just the examination of theme and the exploration of that. So yeah, this book asks some very compelling questions, and it does it through some very strong characters that have very strong moral foundations and their own codes. Essentially, this book is Romeo and Juliet with, pun intended, star-crossed lovers who one is on the side of the Empire, the other is side of the Rebel. They did grow up together at first on their homeworld, and then they went to the Academy, but then one saw the atrocities of the Empire and decided to leave, while the other wanted to stay. Now, the reason I'm not going to specify, at least in this portion, I am going to do a spoiler section afterwards, is that I think it's actually, I actually thought that one of the characters was going to go with the Rebels initially, but the opposite happened of what I was expecting. So I don't want to spoil who goes on the Rebel side and who was on the Imperial side. But they do split off, and then they become, but they still love each other, and then there's this whole conflict about how that works out. There were some very touching scenes even, like there was one point where they talk to each other through a hologram, and I can even just see the imagery of two lovers, two people who are so far away from each other in so many different ways, but trying to reconnect in some way. And I can see the imagery of like, two holograms like trying to touch each other, like ET status or something like that. But I don't know, something about that scene was very beautiful to me. And they have a lot of moments like that they have together, that even though they have these completely differing opinions and outlooks of life, they still find each other and find love in each other. And all of that, I think, is done very well in this novel. I mean, it is a romance novel, so we should expect some pretty good romance from it. And it is good. It's not like forced romance. I feel like they naturally, especially in the beginning, like there's the portion of the book where they're friends, basically. I even felt the love there. Like there's this one scene, I'm not going to specify again, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a scene where one character helps another character through a personal thing that they're going through in their home life. And just that, it was a little moment. It was a very, very small moment, maybe like a paragraph or two at the end of one of the chapters. And it was so touching, and I really understood their connection, and it felt very natural. But yeah, that imagery of the two holograms trying to touch each other, it was pretty deep. And speaking of deep, we really get a huge insight into the Empire and the Rebels and how they work, the recruiting systems. We do get aspects of the Empire. We're familiar with how they have academies, and we even get some aspects of it within the Rebels TV series, and how they bring up the children of the Empire and make them Imperial officers and things like that. But we don't really get much insight into how the Rebels recruit their members, and it's actually very it's hard basically to even get into the Rebels, and the character that goes onto the rebel side makes a statement that someone can be left behind by the rebels very easily. Like if you leave and don't come back in a certain amount of time, you're going to be left behind. And to rekindle that relationship with the rebels, it takes a long time just to figure out where they are or get back in touch with them. So I thought that was a pretty good, interesting little bit, is that, you know, the rebels are always on the move. They're very much a covert operation. That's something that you would think about, but to see the aspects of how hard it is to be a part of the Rebel Alliance and just to stay with the Rebel Alliance, I thought was a very interesting aspect. And it really shows, like, you know, the different kinds of factions. Like the Empire is pretty much everywhere, but then the rebels are also everywhere, but they're definitely more covert, and it's hard to, you know, find out where they are. I do feel the novel was a little bit too convenient. That's probably my biggest gripe with the novel. I felt like there was only 2 scenes that made sense for our protagonists to come together, and it related to their homeworld, because that just makes sense to me. But then everything else felt kind of forced. Like every time that they met up with each other, whatever the aspect might be, whatever the scene was, it sometimes felt way too like, okay, that's a little bit of a stretch. But then I guess, like, in the aspects of it being, you know, a romance novel or just, you know, fiction in general, like things like that are going to happen. But it happened a little bit too often, which made me, like, each time it happened, I was like, okay, all right. I don't know if they would meet each other that often in that way, you know, like I felt like that was a little bit off-putting to me, because it took me out of, like, their very natural relationship to having, like, these plot conveniences to bring them back together. Also, some of the juxtaposition between them was a little bit too perfect. Like there was times when they were in the academy and they both were, like, thinking the same thing or thinking the same thing about each other, that I felt like was a little bit But I do see kind of the beauty of it, because it is kind of like poetry. I mean, you know, as George Lucas has said,
again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme, every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one. Hopefully it'll work.
And there's a case for that here in the novel. Sienna and Thane, I'm sorry, that's their names, by the way, Sienna and Thane. Their lives are kind of rhyming each other, even in their contrasting environments. And I guess there is kind of a beauty of that, of them being... And there is an aspect of destiny a little bit in this novel as well, especially with regards to the Force, which is really cool. Like both of the characters learn so much from each other in so many ways. Like there's some really, really deep themes in here. And yeah, I think that was interesting. Like, and I understand, like, the reason to write that, even though it is a little bit, I feel like it was too forced. Like it felt very much like poetry, like it was a forced rhyme of each other's lives. I still understand the positive aspects of it, I guess. It's just that it felt a little bit too contrived for me. But man, the ending of this novel is fantastic on several levels. But from just the deep level of like I was saying, the themes, there is a huge catharsis and culmination of what was happening throughout the whole novel in just this one scene. And everything is just put on the line in that last scene, in terms of the rebels and the Empire, these 2 lovers, Thane and Sienna. I feel like the author wrote a perfect climactic scene for this, in all, just so many aspects, like what was happening around them, what was happening internally with their own struggles, mentally, physically. It was just perfect. I think the ending was really great. And I think that's also what elevates a novel really well. If you have a really good ending, then you can really, really tie in everything together and really elevate your novel, like, to the next level. So now I'm going to get into spoilers. So this novel takes place between, or actually right before A New Hope, not right before, but a few years before A New Hope, and even a year after Return of the Jedi, which is the coolest thing, because we actually get to see the Battle of Jakku. Now, if you look at the title of the book, you actually see a Star Destroyer crashing into a planet, but when you're looking at it, you're just like, okay, something's happening. But once you've read the novel and you realize that it's part of the story, and where they're crashing relates to episode 7, it's pretty awesome. So Sienna, our, you know, protagonist on the Empire side, was actually manning that Star Destroyer and actually ordered it to crash into the planet for several reasons. For one, like, you know, logistically, she didn't want the rebels to commandeer the Star Destroyer and things like that. But also, she was just fed up with the Empire. Like, Thane had tried to tell her throughout the whole story that, hey, the Empire is bad, like, we gotta leave, you know, but she didn't want to believe it, and she also didn't want to break her honor code, because she has this whole thing, which sometimes for me was a little bit of a stretch, that she was so, like, about her code, but she lives in a society where your word is like your greatest bond. Like, you cannot go back on your word in any way possible. to the point where her mother is actually wrongly accused by the Empire, and she still is loyal to the Empire. Like, she was really crazy. She's like chaotic lawful in terms of like for those D&D players out there. But yes, like she was so about the Empire, and she felt like the only way she can get out of it but still retain her honor was by essentially committing suicide. Bringing the Star Destroyer down. So it shows that, she's doing her job as an Imperial agent, but she can also stop fighting for this Empire that she no longer believes in. And that's really deep stuff right there. Like, there's a lot going on just within that. And then their whole scene together, Thane and Sienna, when they were fighting on the Star Destroyer, it just summed up their relationship so well. And then having the background of, like, this fireball of a Star Destroyer, like, crashing into the atmosphere, like, represents, like, the fire of the relationship and just the struggle. Like, all of that stuff just works really well. It would have worked really well in film too. I think this whole story would have worked well as a film adaptation, which would be kind of cool if they actually did that. But I don't think they're actually gonna ever do that. They already have their films planned out right now. But yeah, there's some other aspects of the world that happen post Return of the Jedi. It's said that Naboo has been attacked 3 different times. One of them we saw in Shattered Empire. Second one we've seen here in the novel with Thane when he was kind of doing the cleanup crew for it. And there's the third time we haven't seen yet, but maybe we'll see it in some other comic book or a novel. But it's funny to see the Empire still trying. And even the Battle of Jakku, it's mentioned to be the largest battle since the Endor battle. It's basically the Empire's last effort to push forward against the New Republic, and of course they ultimately fail. But we do get the aspects of how they will come back eventually. Like, all these Imperial agents want to come back and defeat this rebel alliance or this New Republic. And there's one character that really baffled me. His name is Nash Windrider, who was friends with Thane when he was still a part of the Empire. He flips so quickly. Like, when he finds out that Thane's alive, the first thing he wants to do is kill Thane. Now, that's by itself not that crazy, but the other thing is that this guy is from Alderaan, and he was on the Death Star when Alderaan was destroyed. Like, he saw his homeworld being destroyed by the Empire, and yet he's still loyal to the Empire, and yet he, like, hates rebels and things. Like, I don't know, like, it didn't really make sense to me. Like, I would think he would have, I actually thought that originally he was gonna go with Thane when Thane had left to go be a part of the rebels. Well, he didn't leave to go to the rebels at first. He just went to leave the Empire in general, but then he eventually joined. But I thought, he would have gone with them, and that never really made sense to me. I guess the one aspect of how that can make sense was that Sienna had a similar struggle where she said the Empire is all she had. Her whole life was dedicated to just being part of the Empire, and it could be the same case for Nash, in that even though his homeworld was destroyed and basically his entire family and bloodline was gone, the only thing he had left was the Empire, so that's all he can identify with. So I guess I could understand it from that part, but we didn't really get that. Like, I had to actually throw my own interpretation in there for it to make sense. The author never really actually says why Nash was that way. Like, we never got into his mind in that aspect, in his motivations. I didn't really understand that. So I didn't really like that aspect of the book either. But I do like how deep we got into the Empire. Like, this book really humanizes the people of the Empire. Like, for instance, the Death Star had a lot of innocent people on there. Like, yeah, sure, it was a super weapon as its primary function, but it did hold a lot of other like levels and aspects of it within the Death Star itself. And because we got to know some of these people who were in the Empire and that they're decent people, like, even if you think about it, Luke Skywalker was going to be a part of the Empire when he wanted to go to the Academy and all that. But just seeing that, and really that even shows the ambiguity of war. And also there was an aspect of war criminals in this that I thought was very interesting. Like, war criminals are only based on if you lost. If you lost, then you become a war criminal. Like, Mon Mothma could be seen as a war criminal just as easily as Tarkin or anybody else if she was on the losing side. Like, if the Rebel Alliance lost, she can easily be tried for war crimes because she was responsible for many deaths on the Imperial side. So I thought that's kind of interesting, like, just in history, how we treat war criminals and just the aspect of war criminals in general. It's kind of awesome. And the ambiguity I liked in this book a lot too, because I feel like the original trilogy is very black and white, while most of the expanded universe stuff is very gray, and I like that this was definitely keeping to the grayness of the galaxy. Whenever you're in war, there's no real good or evil. It's more of just about interpretations and what side you're on. Although the Empire is pretty evil, and that's even highlighted within the story. That's the reason why Thane joins the rebels in general, is because he sees that even though they're struggling to fight the Empire, they're still helping refugees from worlds and giving them, like, food supplies and, just shelter and things like that. So there is that aspect as well. But I thought it was interesting bringing up the point of war criminals. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I want to say about the novel. I definitely would recommend it. I would say I would rate this a 4 out of 5 stars, meaning that this would be audiobook worthy, in my opinion. I even hear that the audiobook is pretty good, so you can listen to that. Definitely one of the better novels of the new canon. I definitely preferred over Aftermath. Even the aspects that happened after Return of the Jedi, I think, were handled better than Aftermath was, in terms of just having more compelling characters and more insights into what's happening. But yeah, most of the story is pre-Return of the Jedi, and all of that stuff is really cool. It's basically kind of like a greatest hits of the original trilogy, where the characters see like every big event that happens, whether through the rebel side or the Empire side. So yeah, I definitely recommend this novel. I definitely think it's slightly overhyped. Don't think it's going to be like the greatest thing since like sliced bread or anything like that, but it is an extremely good read with extremely awesome themes and strong characters, and just a very good look into the galaxy and the lore of the Imperial reign. So that's it. Thank you guys for coming in and looking at my review. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always. What I've seen in a lot of debates is that people, including myself, either lowball Mace or lowball Sidious to achieve their point. Throw a grenade at him. Alright, now critical strike. Oh, I killed him! Oh no, I didn't mean to throw 2! Oh, that's such a waste. Such a waste. Wow, I was talking forever.